Hi everybody, happy Wednesday. I hope you're all having a great week so far. This week's video, there is tons of stuff that I'm going to be sharing with you. The video is going to be a little bit longer because I'm demonstrating two different makeup looks using these Viseart Theory palettes. So you'll get to see how well the shadows work, how pigmented they are, how well they go on, how easy they are to blend. I'm going to be starting the video with a really natural look using this palette called Siren, that's it here. And then I'm going to be switching over and doing a really dark smoky eye using this Absinthe palette. So you'll get to see how I switch over looks when I'm working on set and how I go from really light to something more dramatic and dark. These two palettes are completely different colors, so I think it'll be interesting for you to see how I do that and how I manage the changeover. You will also get to see how I build a really intense smoky eye. And I know a lot of you, when I posted about these palettes a couple weeks ago on Instagram, were kind of questioning how I was going to do a wearable makeup look using a green shadow. So you will get to see that. And the other great thing about this video this week is that I'm going to be showing you how to work with a client that has a fake tan. Our model Marina for this week showed up to set with a fake tan, so her face is much lighter than her neck and chest. Lucky for me, the tan that she had on was really light and natural and it was very easy to blend, but I will be sharing a couple pointers for you, things that will help you work with your clients that do have a fake tan because it can be very challenging. It's hard to blend everything together. It's hard to get a right color match. So I'm going to be sharing a couple tips with you on how to deal with that in this video as well. So let's get started with our first look. Let's take a look at Marina's before photo. Looking at Marina's before photo, you can see there is a bit of a difference between the color of her face and the color of her neck. You can see where the sunless tanner is on her neck and chest. Luckily for me, it has more of a yellow undertone, so this is going to be quite easy for me to sort of blend together and make everything look natural when it comes to the makeup application. She's not in the land of really brown, orangey, sunless tanner, so I'm happy about that. She's got really great brows, although her natural hair color is quite dark, so I have to be careful not to fill them in too much, especially with the first look. The overall look of the makeup should be really soft and beautiful, so I don't want to have really dark, intense brows that contrast strongly with her hair. I want to keep everything looking soft and pretty. Marina is another model that has deep set eyes just by fluke. I think most of the models that have sat for me for these videos have had deeper set eyes. So you'll be able to see my shadow application. You've seen it in the past with lighter, softer makeup looks where I just do a wash of color across the eyelid. But for the deeper shadow look, for a heavier smoky eye, you'll get to see how I build that look with someone that has deep set eyes. She's got a few little spots on her skin, but I don't need to do any color correction with these. The foundation itself is probably going to do a great job of covering everything up. Her under eye area was quite dry and dehydrated, so I'm starting with the Bioderma Sensibio Eye, just applying it with a brush to make sure I get a good amount of product on there, and then I'll go in and press it in with my fingers, give it a few seconds to set in before I move on with the rest of the makeup. Usually with clients that have a sunless tanner applied, if it is on their face as well, their skin can become very dry and dehydrated as a result. So I'm going in with the Embryolisse, putting that on with a brush, and then working it in with my fingers. And don't forget about lip balm. It's best to put this on before you start your makeup application so it has time to set in. I'm using Face Atelier foundation because it is quite yellow based. Her skin is actually pinker in tone if you were to look at it, but because her neck is more yellow, I need to use a foundation that's more yellow, so when I go in with those deeper tones, I can blend everything together and it looks natural once the foundation is on. I'm using MAC Studio Fix Powder Foundation as sort of a base shadow. I'm using it to set the foundation that I put on her eyes, and I'm also using it as almost an eyeshadow primer. This Studio Fix foundation gives me a bit of coverage and it creates a nice base, so when I put any color over top, it'll grab onto the eyelid, the color will pop, and it will be very easy to apply and blend the shadows. I don't want to start with a primer at this stage because it's going to make it more challenging for me when I try to remove the shadow and go into that darker look. Marina has fantastic brows, and I have to be careful actually not to fill them in too much. Her natural hair color is quite dark, and I don't want her brows to overpower the rest of this makeup look, which is supposed to be really fresh and natural. So I'm only going in with the brow powder where I need it. So I'll go in with the powder, brush it through, step back, take a look, just to ensure that the brows are not too heavy. I want to make sure I maintain a really effortless looking brow for this eyeshadow look. Now I'm going to start to build this eyeshadow look. So I really love soft, light layers of shadow, especially when there is a bit of color to them and I really want that color to pop on the eyes. So this lightest color in the palette is the first shadow that I'm going in with. I'm softly applying it with a fluffier brush just all over the lid. I'm not going right up to the brow, but I'm stopping sort of just underneath where the brow is. Now I'm going to take the second color and I'm using a brush that's a little bit more dense than the MAC 224. It's the MAC 217, and you'll see me press the shadow on and then blend it out. I want to start to build this pinky peach look on the lid. So this is the second deepest color, and you can see how much pigment there is to this already. I want to add some interest to this eye makeup look, so I'm taking the MAC 239 brush, which is more dense, and I'm pressing in one of the shimmery shadows from the palette just onto the center of the lid. And you can see that even these shimmery shadows do have pigment to them. They blend really beautifully on the eyelid and they almost look creamy when you work them onto the skin. I want to add some intensity to this makeup look, and I want to make use of more of the shadows in this palette. So I'm going in with this reddy brown color. It's the deepest color in the palette. I'm being very cautious to keep it close to the lash line. I like to keep the most intense shadows in that area with my clients that have deeper set eyes. So I'm being very careful to press that in and then blend it out onto the rest of the lid. I need more highlight and just more dimension with this look. So I'm going in and adding another layer of a metallic shadow. It's a gold tone shadow, and I'm pressing that onto the center of the eyelid. You can see how reflective these are on camera, and anytime I can have products that are powdery but look creamy on camera, I'm definitely into it. And you can see how beautiful the finish is with these shadows. I'm removing fallout with Bioderma on a cotton pad. I was definitely not cautious with how I was applying that shadow, but generally speaking with Viseart, there's not a ton of fallout. If you were being careful, I can guarantee you there would be very minimal fallout with these eyeshadows. You will notice in my makeup applications, I'm always fine tuning. I always go back in and gradually build color, and I like to make sure things are really well blended. So that's what I'm doing here. And I want to bring more highlight under the brow, and there wasn't a color that was light enough in the Siren palette. So I'm just using this MAC palette to add some highlight under the brow. This MAC palette is one of my new favorite things, so you're going to be seeing this again later on in the video. Now we're moving on to the rest of the foundation application. You can start to see the Face Atelier on her skin, because of that yellow undertone, is starting to take on the same tone as the fake tan that's on her neck and chest. So this is definitely what we want. I'm going in with a lighter color first, then I'm going to go back in with a deeper color to add dimension and to start to blend the rest of her face into the neck. Her actual skin tone is not as yellow, but we have to make an adjustment to accommodate the undertone of the Sunless Tanner. I'm using a concealer mixed with corrector. The concealer I'm using is also a yellow undertone. I have to make sure everything looks harmonious on the skin. The foundation, the concealer, anything I'm using has to work with the color that's on her neck and chest. So I'm just taking a tiny amount. I don't need a lot. She doesn't have a lot to conceal under the eyes. You'll also see me use this brush with concealer and corrector to soften the edges of the eyeshadow as well. It's a nice little trick that just makes things look blended before you set everything with powder. I'm going to set the under eye concealer with the Laura Mercier Secret Brightening Powder. I want to keep everything looking fresh. The eyes, the skin, I don't want to over powder this look. And because I know I'm going to be switching up the looks, I'm going to be very light with the amount of powder that I'm using. Her face with the foundation that I already applied is still quite a bit lighter than her neck and chest. So I'm taking a smaller brush and I'm using Face Atelier in number 8, which is quite a large jump in terms of the shade range from her natural skin tone. And I'm going in to add dimension to the skin, but this is also where I'm going to start to bridge the gap between the color on her face and the color that is on her neck and chest. When you're doing this, be very careful, do it very gradually, use a smaller brush, get that darker color on there that matches more closely to the Sunless Tanner, and really blend it into the perimeter of the face and down onto the neck as well. You're gonna be seeing me blend a ton with this makeup application, especially with the foundation. It really is the only way to seamlessly blend a color that might not be naturally occurring on your client's skin. I'm taking a sculpting powder from Makeup Forever and I'm using this to make sure everything looks seamless, blending it into the cheekbones and down onto the neck. So excited to show you this cream blush application. So I'm mixing 2 colors of the RCMA cream blush with MAC cream color base in Hush. I love this stuff. It's a creamy highlighter. It blends really nicely on the skin, and it's the same undertone as the Viseart shadows, so that peachy pink color. On top of that, I'm layering just a bit of the MAC Hyper Real Glow Palette. This stuff is amazing. It looks so beautiful on the skin, and you can see how it just makes her skin look really healthy and really fresh on camera. And because I'm going to switch the look up, I don't want a ton of product on the rest of her skin, so I'm setting the foundation only where she needs it. And then I just need to add a little bit more dimension to the cheeks, so I'm using this extra dimension blush from MAC just right on the apples of her cheeks, just so the color really does stand out on camera. A quick addition to this eye makeup look: after doing the cheeks, I felt that the eyes needed to be intensified, so I'm going in with a very soft taupe shadow. It's a very light shade, just to give the eye some more shape so that it doesn't look so simple on camera, and then going over with just a reflective color from the Viseart palette. Not too pink, not too red, because you don't want it to look like she has pink eye or that she has an irritated eye. So that's why I'm using those 2 shades. And then finishing off the look with just some L'Oreal Carbon Black mascara, really simple, not too much, and making sure that the mascara gets right to the lash line. I did want to keep the lips fairly muted, but I wanted to give them a color that was just a bit cooler than what's on the eyelid for some contrast. So I mixed 2 colors of Maybelline lipstick with the Elizabeth Arden 8-Hour Cream, and you can see that the lip color is just a bit cooler than what's on her eyes, so it makes her lips stand out, but it doesn't overpower the rest of the look. I also want to make sure her neck and chest look just as luminous as the rest of her face, so I'm going in with the Tatcha Luminous Skin Mist just to tie everything together. And here's the final look using the Viseart Siren palette. You can see her face and neck, everything's blended together. Her face looks healthy. The eyeshadow almost looks creamy because we layered both matte and more reflective shadows from the palette, and the color that I chose on her lip is a bit cooler than what's on her eyes, so it's a nice contrast as well. So you have to be pretty thoughtful when you are switching looks. You need to think about how you're going to transition the looks on set. When I can, I like to keep the brows and lashes intact. I find when you start removing mascara, things get a little bit more complicated, gets a bit messier, and it may take longer. So where I like to start in terms of transitioning the 2 looks, I'll take a Q-tip and I'll remove everything that is closest to the lash line with a Q-tip and some makeup remover. And I always like to use the Bioderma Micellar Water. It removes everything very quickly. Once I'm done with the Q-tip, I'll use a cotton pad with Bioderma on it, and I'll remove the rest of the shadow on the lid. It's coming off very easily because I did not use a very thick primer, and I'll remove the product under the eyes as well, and I'll also take down a little bit later some of the blush on the cheeks. I'm going back to square one. I'm prepping the lids, starting with some Face Atelier foundation. I'm being very careful with this. I don't want to disturb the brow. I'm making sure it gets right into the inner corner of the eye and as close to the lash line as I can. This will just give me a nice base to build the rest of the smoky eye. From here, I'm using the MAC Prep and Prime 24-Hour Extend Eye Base. It's my favorite primer to use. It's going to help me get the Viseart shadow on really quickly, easily, and it will help bring out that beautiful deep green color that I'm going to be using for this look. Something that I like to do is start building the smoky eye by lining the waterline as my first step. I like to use a pencil that's very soft, not waterproof, so it has time to almost smudge around the lash line, because I do like a super dark lash line and I don't want any gaps that show the skin. I like to keep it as dark as possible. So I find giving the soft gel liners or a soft kohl pencil time to kind of smudge into the lash line as I'm building the rest of the eyeshadow really works for a beautiful smoky eye. I'm going back in with MAC Studio Fix Powder Foundation. This is hard for me to explain, but when I do a smoky eye, I don't want any of the eyelid showing through, so I like to use the Studio Fix because it covers any little veins or anything that's showing on the eyelid. I like to have a really smooth base to start. You're gonna see me go back and forth between a couple different brushes, and you'll see me layering a lot of eyeshadows. As I mentioned, I like a really smooth, dense, smoky eye. So I start with this brown color from the Viseart palette, and I'm packing the color on, and I'm using this first color to determine the shape of my smoky eye, how far I want to bring it up the eyelid, if I want to do a cat eye, do I want to wing it out. I'm sketching out the sort of rough outline of where I'm going to be applying the rest of the shadows with that first color. I'm using the MAC 224 brush, which is fluffier, to soften those edges. I'm going in now with a highlighter from the Viseart palette. I'm also using that highlighter to soften the edges because I do want some dimension to this look. So you'll see me go back and forth with brushes, with shadows, and I sort of layer the eyeshadow on the eyelid, and that's how I build up the intensity of the smoky eye. I'm packing on this deep green shadow with a MAC 239 brush. I didn't think I was gonna love the shadow as much as I did. You can see how deep the color is, how rich it is, how great it looks on the eyelid, and you can see how easy the shadow is to blend out. So I pack it on with a dense brush, and then I blend it out with a fluffier brush. The Viseart shadows, the way they're made, the texture, the quality, it makes it really easy to get them on the eyelid, and the color shows up really beautifully. I'm killing two birds with one stone here. I'm cleaning up the fallout, and I'm also giving the smoky eye a nice clean shape. Now I'm gonna go in with the reflective green color just on the center of the eye, and you can see how that's picking up really beautifully on camera. If you want to give your smoky eyes more of an editorial quality, you need to play with finish and texture and color, and just adding that reflective color to the center of the eye, it brings out the green, but it also adds another dimension to the eyeshadow. You're able to see here what my process is to build out the smoky eye. So it really is just a matter of packing on color, blending it out, making sure there's no hard edges, making sure everything looks soft, layering the deeper greens, layering on something that's more reflective and catches light on the center of the eye to add dimension. So it's a very simple process. You just have to be very patient. I really take time to make sure that when I do create a smoky eye, it's not just as simple as putting one dark shadow all over the lid. And that is really what gives you more of that editorial feel. I'm taking my cotton pad again with Bioderma on it. I'm removing fallout, but I'm also shaping the outer corner of that smoky eye. At this point, I feel like my eyes are pretty much there, so I will also remove the cheek color, the blush, the highlighter. It's not working with the shadow look, so I want to make sure to get that off. And then I will start refreshing her foundation and building the rest of the look. This part is pretty simple. I'm just adding foundation back onto where I removed it. Face Atelier blends really well. The rest of the foundation wasn't heavily powdered, so it's very easy to blend. I'm using the same colors that I used when I started this makeup application initially, just buffing that onto the skin. The highlighter from the Viseart Absinthe palette is a little bit too white for my liking for this look, so I'm just pulling from this MAC palette to add some more highlight under the brow that's not super white. Then I'm gonna go in and conceal and correct. Same thing that I did at the beginning of the video, same concealer, same color corrector, and then using that brush with some concealer on it to soften the outer corner of the smoky eye. And back to adding dimension to make sure that her face and neck blend together. So I am applying foundation just on the outer perimeter of the face. I want the skin to be more matte for this look, so I'm setting everything with the Laura Mercier translucent setting powder, including the concealer under her eyes. So I'll press that in and blend it out onto the rest of the face. I want to intensify the lower lash line. You have to be careful if you are doing this after you've already set your concealer and the rest of the foundation with powder. I have confidence in the Viseart shadows. You can see there's not a lot of fallout even with the really dark shadows, so I can easily blend that in, adding some dimension onto the cheeks. So replicating the same steps that I did initially just to bring the foundation back to where it was. I spoke earlier about creating smoky eyes that were really dense and dark at the lash line. To me, that is just an essential part of a smoky eye. So I'm using this soft pencil from Sephora along the lash line, and then I'm gonna press it in with this MAC 239 brush. I'm also using this pencil on the waterline. This is very comfortable for your clients if you are going to be using a pencil like this. It's soft, it's bigger, it's not something as sharp and small and pointy as a regular eye pencil. So I love something like this for creating a smoky eye, and it blends really well in with the rest of the shadow. Going in with my fan brush and some mascara just to intensify the lash line. I didn't use a lot of mascara initially, so I can get away with a second coat and some more mascara on the lashes here. I want to keep the eyes as the focus for this makeup look, so I'm using MAC blush in Copper Tone, just a soft neutral color. I want to bring some life back into her skin, so I'm just gonna add some highlighter on the top of the cheeks. Nothing crazy, just a little bit to make the skin look nice and healthy on camera. I am using MAC lipstick in Blankety and Honey Love. Those are classic MAC nude shades just to balance out the eye. I'm a big fan of doing a nude lip with a smoky eye, so I guess I'm pretty traditional that way. No liner required, nothing too heavy, just a really soft nude lip. I think it's gonna look great with the rest of the makeup application. And here is the final look. Back to this idea of having a nice dense lash line, I decided last minute to throw on a false lash. I'm using an Mosquito Unison lash for this look, and I chose a style that was not really overpowering. It's a shorter lash, it's nice and dense at the lash line, and I think it'll be a nice complement to the smoky eye. Here's Marina's before and after. You can see even though we used a green color, it's quite wearable. The eyeshadow blended beautifully, and the smoky eye is not something that's too intense. So this could easily be worn by anybody for an event, for a wedding, for a night out. So it's a great look to be able to master. Let's take a look at the smoky eye with and without a lash. On the left we have without, and on the right we have with a lash. I definitely think the lash adds something to the makeup look. It's not overpowering, it's not all about the lashes. So it's definitely a nice touch to add a lash to a smoky eye like this. And if we go back to the beginning of the video, here's the first look I created with the Viseart Siren palette, and on the right, that's the Viseart Absinthe palettes. So two totally different looks with both of these palettes. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I'm hoping it was helpful for you to see me create those two looks and also work with these Viseart palettes. I know a lot of you have shown interest in these palettes and you're wondering if they're worth the money, if you should buy them, if you should invest. They definitely are. They're really high quality. They last quite a long time on the skin. The great thing about these shadows, and as you can see in my video, is that you can layer them and they don't get muddy on the skin. The colors stay true. You can layer those more metallic shades with the matte shades. You can really get into creating beautiful eyeshadow looks, adding dimension, layering, adding those metallic shades if you want. And they're just really easy to work with. My first experience with Viseart actually was a couple years ago. I bought a palette, just the neutral matte palette, and I had used it religiously for quite some time until one day someone sat on my station and put something on my table and it knocked a bunch of things over, and my Viseart eyeshadow palette went flying and smashed into a million pieces, and I could not salvage it after that. So that was a hard thing for me to get over. So I'm happy to have these back in my kit. They're definitely a really great eyeshadow. I did want to say a couple quick things about working with sunless tanner or fake tans. I was very lucky with our model this week. What she had on was really light, really natural. It looked more realistic than many sunless tanners do. And because it was a more yellow based sunless tanner, I could blend in the Face Atelier foundation pretty seamlessly, so it was easy for me to work with. If you are working with somebody that has that sunless tan that's more orange or almost that muddy browny color, you're gonna wanna make sure that you bring in this color to the perimeter of the face and down the neck, even if it's just with a light finishing powder. You need to make sure that the tones on the skin match. This doesn't mean that you're gonna go all over the face with, you know, this like muddy brown color, but you do want to make sure to bring in just a hint of that color on the perimeter of the face. You'll also notice with people with sunless tanner that they sometimes get a darker color under the neck. It's just the way the product sits, or if they've washed their face a couple times since they've had their tan, the face will be really light and they won't wash here, so this can be dark. So just keep an eye out for that, and that's why you kind of blend the darker foundation or powder that you're using to blend everything together. Make sure to get onto that neck and under that jawline. Another quick tip, I didn't do it in this video, but I wanted to mention, right here where you part your client's hair, if you're doing bridal, if you're doing an event, it's a dead giveaway because usually the part is going to be very light and the face is going to be very dark. What I like to do is take some of that root touch-up spray, the same color as their hair, and just spray the part sometimes, unless the look needs a defined part. It does help to blend in the really dark orange face sometimes with the rest, and the ears as well. Don't forget to bronze up the ears, especially if you have a client that has an updo or their ears are going to be showing, because usually sometimes they put the cap on their head when they're doing the sunless tanner and the ears will be really white. So make sure to blend something onto the ears and watch out for that really white hairline. If you are working with a client where you can kind of spray their part a little bit and it won't affect the look of the hairstyle that they want, go ahead and do it. If they need to have a part there, if it's like a, you know, like a retro look with a really deep part and it needs to be visible, if you can, just take a shadow brush, even a little bit of foundation or powder foundation. With dark hair, this is more challenging, but just try to fill in the part with something that looks closer to the darker skin tone that's on their face. This will just make everything appear more natural. It's something that's small, but it does make a difference. So watch out for ears and parts in the hair. And I think that's everything that I wanted to cover in this video. I know you're asking for more in-depth lash application tutorials, and those will definitely be coming in the future. So for those of you that have been asking, I didn't plan on adding a lash. It's just something I decided to do last minute for this video. So I would like to film it properly for you and share some of my tips when it comes to lash application with you on another video. So that's everything for this week. Thank you so much for hanging in there with me with this video. I know it was a bit longer, but I did want to show you how I transition those looks. And if you have any questions for me, you can put them in the comments. And of course, I'll see you back here next Wednesday. Bye, everybody.